Hello, colleagues, friends, and neighbors. Welcome to the first Cultural Thursday of 2022. My name is Jason Edens, and it's my privilege to be coordinating the Cultural Thursday program going forward. And before we get started on today's amazing program, I just want to take this opportunity to thank our colleague, Tracy Kleckl Jimenez, for her years of service and leadership with regard to the Cultural Thursday program. We all owe her a debt of gratitude for all the cultural literacy that she has fostered in our community. So thank you so much, Tracy. We appreciate your leadership. Well, we have a real treat for you today. I'm excited to introduce to you Dr. Ania Antus. Of course, Dr. Antus is Central Lakes College very own economics instructor, and it's our privilege to have her as our guest today. Of course, she'll be telling us about Polish culture and history and food, and we have a real treat because Dr. Antus is also an accomplished Polish dancer, traditional dancer. So we'll get to see some of that today as well. So she'll be giving a presentation for about the first 45 minutes. Please share your questions through the Q&A. You have the opportunity to ask her questions directly at the end of our presentation today. So we look forward to seeing your questions. So with that, it's my privilege again to introduce to you Dr. Ania Antus.
Hello, everybody. Let's see if I can share what I want to share. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ania Antus. I have a privilege to talk today to you about Poland. And I'll talk about Poland, history, geography, culture, and its people. You already heard my first and last name is Ania Antus. I am a COC economics instructor. I'll use a lot of maps and videos and pictures because I think pictures were 1,000 words, so then I can talk less. This is the first one I found looking to compare Minnesota and Poland, so you have an idea. Poland is about 1.5 times bigger than Minnesota. And if you put one map on top of the other, this is how it looks. And here's my presentation. I will tell you a little bit about myself so you can better connect with me. What is this funny Polish person doing in Brainerd? And then I'll tell you geography and history of Poland, because to understand what's happening today, you have to have a little background. Then I'll focus on economy and politics, trying not to teach you demand and supply, or just talk in general about economy and my experience of Polish economy growing in 70s, 80s, and 90s in Poland. And then I'll focus on dance, tradition, and food. And at the end, I have a very short little presentation about Poles in Minnesota. And here's my favorite, one of the favorite poster that Poland had. And I translated a little bit underneath so you have an understanding. What is that meaning? Midday, June 4th, 1989. This is in today's history book treated as the end of the communist regime in Poland. And the year it's obviously related to a Berlin Wall. And I'll talk about two of the major presidents, American president, that Polish culture and Poles in general love it. And you can see that a cowboy with a sheriff's star behind the word Solidarność in Polish means solidarity. And that was a poster used to basically advertise first free election in 1989. Here's a little bit me and picture of me dancing. This is actually the costume I'm wearing, part of that. This is my personal from the city of Rzeszów. I was born and raised in the city of Łódź. This is Polish spelling of Łódź. In English, it's Lodz, Poland. I got my master and PhD in economics at the University of Łódź, and that's where I met also my husband, Minnesotan. I'm an educator since 1994. I actually taught in 94 in a high school. I was teaching Spanish. The last 27 plus years, I actually spent teaching a different campus, just started in the fall at CLC. I teach mostly economics, but occasionally I teach insurance and risk management, labor economics, variation. I also taught Polish for 12 years as a volunteering at sister cities in Columbia Heights, Minnesota. And since 2003, I'm also a dancer in a Polish folk group from Minneapolis. The group is called Dolina Dancers. All the videos except of two you see today are actually from our performances. I married my Minnesotan husband in 2000, and I met him actually working in Poland at my university. He came to my university with the St. Cloud State students, basically exchange program in 1997. So that's about me, just to help you understand what I'm doing here. And I'll start with geography. This one will be very short, just to give you an understanding where Poland stands today. And obviously, if you listen to the news, you know about Ukraine being our neighbor. Total area of Polish land is 120,000 square miles. Obviously, I have to put kilometers because we measure in kilometers, 312,000 square kilometers. Population roughly around 38 million by 2020. The numbers are going down. Obviously, pandemic is not sparing Poland neither. Density, fairly highly populated country, 312 people per square miles. We have, if you look at the geographical map here, right, there are lots of brown and orange and brownish. This is the the Carpathian Mountains right here. And when I'm talking about the highest elevation right here, Rysy, almost 2.5 kilometers, but 8,196 feet. Why I'm talking about it, because you can see all the southern part of Poland is a mountain. So historically, we never had really too much problem with those neighbors. However, here, because it's easy access, yes, historically we have issues there. The longest river in Poland is Vistula. We call it Wisła. You can see it right here. It's dividing country almost in half. The largest city is Warsaw, the capital, with almost 1.8 million people. And here, this area in Poland, we call it Mazurian Lake District. We have about 1,000 lakes, so not as many as Brainerd, but still a lot. Not as many as Minnesota. And the biggest lake right here is Śniadwy, 41 square miles. Temperature, if you compare it to Minnesota, we actually have very mild winters, -5, -1 Celsius. We don't get to those minus Fahrenheit temperatures that you have in Minnesota, and fairly not so hot summers. Part of that is obviously impact of the dry continental air from Russia and a warmer from the Atlantic as far as the geography and temperature-wise. Poland right now has 7 neighbors. We used to have 3 neighbors when I was in elementary and high school. We only had East Germany, Soviet Union, and Czechoslovakia. Now, obviously, some countries united, like Germany, some split. So we have Russia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Slovakia, and Czech Republic now being called Czechia. We have the 6th most populous state in European Union with 38 million. The name Poland comes from an early Slavic tribe called Polans or Polanie. Over time, people inhabiting this region became to be known as Poles, or in Polish, Polak. And a very important part of the geography, obviously, Polish society is religion, and I'll talk about it in a moment. As of 2021, almost 80% of people in Poland are Roman Catholic. Used to be much higher. If we go back before transformation of 90s in Poland, it doesn't mean all of them attend church. It just means that they are baptized and associate themselves with Roman Catholic Church. Here's a little history. I don't want to overwhelm you, but it's hard to talk about Polish history, what's happening today without the past. Poland have a very long history, 1,000 plus years. So these are just highlights. I'm not going to talk about all the wars. I basically selected the most important part, according to me, in a Polish history. So the first one will be a year 966. Poland adopted Christianity as a state religion, and it came with the very first Polish Duke Mieszko I. He established and started Piast dynasty, and he married a Czech duchess. She was religious. She was obviously Roman Catholic, and that's how we actually got a religion introduced into Poland. His son Bolesław I, he became a first king of Poland, and you can see the year 1025. And then it was for 300 years very nice and peaceful. Poland was, creating unions with the neighbors, with Lithuania. That union actually was created by the last of the Piast dynasty queen, Queen Jadwiga. She married the Jagiellonian Duke, Jagiellonian Władysław Jagiełło, and they obviously continue having a next dynasty, Jagiellonian. Another very important year in Poland, 1364. We have first university established in Krakow, and Poland was actually second after Italy to have university. If you go today to Krakow, yes, university is still there. It had a time that ceased to exist for like 20, 30 years and obviously came back. You have to remember at that time, university, it was number one, the language was Latin. We didn't use Polish yet. And number two, only royalty, so rich people and priests were part of the university. In 1596, the capital was moved. We actually, in Polish history, have three cities that were capital. During the Piast dynasty, it was Gniezno, then it came to Krakow, now it's Warsaw. And then we had lots of wars. That's where geography helps to understand. Even Sweden attacked us. You might say, well, where's Baltic there? But Sweden crossed Baltic when it was frozen. So they were occasionally 1655, Sweden attacked Poland. Most often we had problems with East and West. So Russia, Tatars, and Turks, they basically put an end for the golden age of Poland. And what happened after, weakened by wars, Poland was divided by Prussian, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian empires. And we had 3 times of partition. First partition, 1772, second, 1793, 1795. So in those years, Poland basically lost independence. And that situation lasted for 123 years. As a child, I remember, easy to remember, 1, 2, 3, right? 123 years, but it was a long history for Poland. This is how after the last partition Poland looked like. So if you combine those colors, that was Poland before 1772. After partition, you can see Russia took quite a big chunk of Poland. Here you can see this is what's right now, obviously, Ukraine is Belarus, is Lithuania today. Prussia took a chunk and Austro-Hungarian Empire took the rest. That's very important if you're looking for any Polish history, genealogical, because you have to figure out which part of Poland they came. Well, then the end of the Great War, before it was called First World War, it was a Great War, marked the birth of an independent Polish nation. And believe it or not, it was Woodrow Wilson that put in his writing, point 14 was Poland to regain independence. That's how November 11, 1918, Poland came back to being as an independent country. Didn't last too long. Second World War started September of 1939. First Germany, September 1st, then September 17th, Soviets attacked us from the east, and Poland was divided again. But during the war, obviously there was a huge loss both of the lives, 6 million of Jewish and also Polish people that died. When the war came to the end, 1945, German army pushed out of Poland by the Soviets. Obviously, we just changed the occupants. The Soviet Union started ruling Poland, and Poland became a communist state, or if you prefer, a central plan economy, whatever you like it better. 1978 marked a very important part of Polish history because Polish priest Karol Wojtyła was elected Pope. And that was like a beacon of hope for Poland, where the changes start moving in a different direction. Similar time, Lech Wałęsa, 2 years later, basically he became a leader of trade union and urged 10 million workers to join his cause in the 80s. He was in prison because of obviously martial law that was instituted in Poland by Soviet government. 2 years later, he won a Nobel Peace Prize and became a president of Poland in the election. I was just showing you, so 1989, he won election, the free election. This is me. I had a pleasure to meet President Wałęsa actually in America, in Iowa, in a Decorah College when I was studying here in US. In 1992, after Soviet Union collapsed, it was dissolved in December of 91, Soviet Union started finally removing the troops from Poland. And by 2004, Poland joined membership of European Union. So that's a very quick scope of the Polish history. And here's an interesting map I found. I think some of you might like to see it, how many times Poland changed the border. And obviously, if we go to 1000, this is an original shape of Poland, that's yellow, basically with access to Baltic. But when you see different years, the big one here, the 1569, that was united with Lithuania, and you can see how far Poland was expanding to the east. I think the last century changing of the borders are more important. 1939, that was Poland right before Hitler invasion, so before Second World War. And then 45, the pink one that you see here, this is really a shape of Poland nowadays. This is today's Poland. And in 3 years after the war, we had a thing called correction of the borders. They were still changing the eastern part of borders right here in a northeast and also south. So they basically add extra land here, subtract the land here. So that's basically history. And now a little bit to the recent history, the one I remember. I was living in Poland. I was 18 years old when Berlin Wall collapsed. So I remember it like it was yesterday. Obviously, Polish people love American president. I mentioned about Woodrow Wilson. We regained independence first time. And here's President Reagan with his famous speech, Mr. Gorbachev turned down this wall. It's June 12, 1987. 2 years later, 2 years and a half almost, Berlin Wall collapsed. And that created big changes in Poland. And obviously here's the election. I was starting my presentation with June 4th, 1989, first Polish free elections, and President Wałęsa got elected president. Here's a little economics. Obviously I had to go in economics and transition. Transition was not so short. Polish transformation basically almost lasted 20 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe 15. We started with 1981 martial law. There were tanks on the street, there were empty shelves. I call it economy of shortages. So what you see here is a queuing line. Here's a typical store with nothing inside. This part of the picture shows you the rationing, and this is the year. This is for November of 1982. But rationing in Poland lasted between 1981 to 1989. What I mean by rationing, once a month you receive a little coupon like that, and there were different things that you were entitled to buy. So for example here, chocolate. You could buy 100 grams of chocolate per month. Here's an alcohol, 1 bottle of alcohol per month, 6 packages of cigarettes, 1.5 kilos of sugar, etc. So you see the list of what was rationed. Obviously, I was a little child, so for me, chocolate was the worst, and shoes. Growing up, your feet change, right? And they ration that. What that means for almost a decade, because if you compare 81 to 89, lots of things were rationing. So Poland was obviously in a scope of economy of shortages. After rationing was over, another disease came to the Polish economy called hyperinflation. What I mean by hyperinflation, prices skyrocketed in this year. This year is very important to remember. So 1 year after the Berlin Wall collapsed, Polish economy was in a disarray. Here's a typical banknote that we were using. This one is actually small. They had a bigger one, 2 million zlotys. Yes. And just to give you a little understanding, okay, 2 million of currency you don't know, US dollar in 1995, $1 was exchanged for 20,000 of Polish zloty. And what you could buy with that was a loaf of bread or a newspaper, daily newspaper. So after hyperinflation, what we had to do, and 95 was another of those years, we have to exchange those zlotys. Dollars was a different story. The zlotys were basically, the new zloty came for the 10,000 of old. So we were cutting 40 to change the currency. Here's a little bit, obviously, economics. I have to show you hyperinflation because Poland had it in 20s between the war, first and second, but the recent hyperinflation, you can see the percentages here, they were humongous. Both look small because this is monthly. So month to month, you might say 7%. Yeah, but it was monthly. Between March and April of 1990, 7% prices were going up. January to February of the same year, 22%. And if you see here, annual inflation was horrible. The money was losing value basically daily. That was the year 1990. What is today? As of 1997, we have a new Polish constitution. So the changes from a Berlin Wall, again, they took a while. We have political structure centers around the Council of Ministers, led by Prime Minister. We have a head of the state, the president, who is elected by popular vote every 5 years. Today, our president is Andrzej Duda, and he is right now elected for second term, so he'll be a 10 years president. His prime minister is Mateusz Morawiecki, and the party I have to mention, it's a Law and Justice Party, but it's fairly controversial. If you read newspaper and hear something about Poland, that politics is not the nicest one right now. We have a parliament of 460 members of the lower house. It's called Sejm. and we have 100 Senate members, 100 members in the Senate, and they are all elected by Polish voters. There is a joint session, also known as National Assembly, and it's formed on 3 occasions: when a new elected president takes the oath of office, when there's indictment against the president, and it's brought by state tribunal, and when the president declares incapacity to fulfill required duties because of health. Here's a little bit, I couldn't find in US dollars, so I figured, well, European euro is okay as well. GDP in Poland, as of this is the year 2015, the data produced by Polish Statistical Office in Poland, it's 10,416 per person. However, in US dollars, because obviously US dollars are more, you understand better, it's around 15,000 GDP today. What I really like to show you here, but Poland is really still divided. And if you see the blue section, most of that was a Prussia during the partition. The red section, yes, most of it was the Soviet Union or Russia part. So that's how the division of Poland still exists. Here's a little more data. This one I pull out from the European Union, just to show you that productivity, we still have fairly low productivity, lower than OECD best performers, 36% lower. And this is right before pandemic hit. As far as employment rate is low. It was increasing before the crisis, but we still have issues in economy per se. If you read Wall Street Journal, this is the latest one I could find what was happening. And since it's related to America, I thought, well, let's tell you a little bit what's happening in Poland. Huge protests erupted right before Christmas in December of 2021. And what was happening, the government was passing the bill. And the bill was passed right before Christmas. They thought they can do it very quickly. And the idea was to censorship or basically shut down the TVN 24, and it's actually TV that is owned by Discovery Channel, and it's criticizing the government, today's government. And what you see here, wolne media, free media, wolni ludzie, free people. So it was a huge protest because they wanted to shut down Polish American TV with the most honest, information of what's happening in Poland. They stopped, actually. The protest worked. Here, what happened after effectiveness of judicial system. This one is a data from Heritage Organization I'm showing you because this is obviously politics related. Poland effectiveness in as far as judicial, it's going down. So the economic freedom is really going down, and it doesn't look too good because of the party right now. Couple other news in the media, I'm sure you've seen that one. This is a border, Polish border, Kuźnica and Bruzki with Belarus. It was a huge problems here because Poland was blocking access for immigrants, and obviously they were related to Belarus. So what was happening? Belarusians were bringing the immigrants from Syria, from all the other countries, not just Syria, from the Middle East, and trying to help them go to European Union. And another interesting thing I thought you might enjoy to know that there is some, here's what government says, the ruling party right now. They said burning coal is patriotic. And 33 out of the 50 most polluted cities in Europe are in Poland. This is according to Economist. And this is the data I'm using, edition from 2018. If you look at the data, it doesn't look too good. Poland is still very much economy running on the coal. All right, let's now switch a little bit to a society and a culture and more fun stuff, leave the history and politics behind. As of 2021, there are 15 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Poland. If you ever travel to Poland, you have to go to Krakow. There is nothing, no other cities you have to start sightseeing. It used to be a capital for almost 400 years. Not far from Krakow is Wieliczka and Bochnia, salt mines at about 600 years old salt mines that you can sightsee, and they only show you about 10% of the whole mine. Obviously, Auschwitz, part of the Polish history, not far from Krakow. The old town in Warsaw, the castle of Teutonic Orders, that's on the North Poland. You have to go to see a Copernicus city of Toruń, medieval town with its famous pierniki, so ginger cookies. Poland is also home for, and here's a debatable thing, 17, 18, 19, I've seen a variety of numbers, how many Nobel Prize laureates we have in Poland. You might say, well, why they cannot count? Part of that is obviously division and partition of Poland, right? Marie Curie, she was born in a Russian part of the Poland. So again, the year she was born, Poland was not an independent country, right? Lech Wałęsa, it's easier to figure out he was born in Poland. Similar thing with a lot of those that you see here, Leonid, I think it's because he was Minnesotan, it's good to talk an economist on top of it. Leonid Hurwicz of University of Minnesota, he won a Nobel in economics, and he was born in Moscow to a Polish family that migrated right on a time of before the Second World War, and he actually started studies before 1939 at University of Warsaw, Poland. But as I said, a lot of Polish people don't even know which, out of 17, I think on average, Polish person would know 6 to 7 of them, but they're Polish. Cannot not mention 500 years, Poland has a huge history of producing high quality vodka. However, vodka in Polish, we call it gorzałka because it do that sensation of burning your mouth. Vodka is not anymore consumed as the top of the liquor. Beer actually did it about 20 years ago at the beginning of 2000. Beer was already being sold more often than vodka. Here's an interesting thing. Over a third of all Polish people live abroad. So I'm not very unique in this case. If you think about third, I saw two different statistics, about 10 to 11 million Poles are living abroad. Poles do not celebrate birthday. We really don't care so much about birthday. We celebrate a thing called Names Day, so your name. And yes, fairly educated labor force, if you think about it. 90% of Poles have completed at least secondary level of education. And now food, because most of us like food. What you see here is pączki. And I'm sure you might say, big deal, donuts, right? But Polish people eat a lot of donuts, and the traditional and food are very much intermingled and basically related to religion. We eat a lot of them on a Fat Thursday. And it's not a typo, it's not Fat Tuesday, it's Fat Thursday. So a Thursday right before Ash Wednesday, this is the beginning of the end of Carnival, and Polish people basically consume 100 million Polish donuts called pączki. They are stuffed with a variety of flavors. You can see here, I think this one looks like a flan, but strawberries, raspberry, prunes, fruits, and marmalades are typically inside the pączki. Traditional Polish food is called bigos, and bigos is made of a variety of meats, basically whatever you have available, meat-wise, with the sauerkraut and a fresh cabbage, spices, and mushrooms. I already talked about imieniny. So why do we celebrate Names Day? Because of religious tradition. In each calendar, there's 2, 3, sometimes 4 names. You basically look in a calendar, find your name. For example, my name is July 26th, and that's where I celebrate Names Day. I do not celebrate my birthday. Basic staple of many Polish meals are potatoes, bread, pierogi, cabbage rolls, and mushrooms. And here I want to show you mushrooms because Polish people absolutely love mushrooms. So if you see me picking mushrooms in Brainerd, you will know, oh, that's a Polish lady. Mushroom mania is so big, and it's historical. I think it's in the poetry and it's in the books, in the writing, right? 47 species of the government's list of mushrooms are approved for food circulation. What that means, people go to the forest. This is me in 80s, basically about 2 hours of work picking mushrooms in the forest. Every mushroom has a part under the cap called the hamophore, that it's either lamella, so it's stripped like chanterelles, or it's flat. The flats are those that we actually pick in a forest. Basically, they're like sponges underneath. The exceptions for the stripped ones are chanterelles, champignons, and portabellas. All right, and I hope I'm not running out of time. This is the best part. I want to show you a little bit about Polish folk dances. You see the map of Poland here, and this is not all the costumes and regions. This is just one example. I think there's about 40 to 70 of them. This is the city I'm from, Łódź. And you can see that all the costumes are different. They are obviously impacted by Polish history, changing borders, Czech, Slovak, Ukrainian, also German. And some of the dances in Poland are classified as so-called national dances. It's Krakowiak, Oberek, Polka, Polonez, and Mazur, very much popularized by Chopin. What else I can tell you about Polish folk dancing? Dancing for almost 20 years. Actually, if I add the Polish experience, more than 20. A lot of them are fairly colorful, also heavy, heavy and lots of layers of fabric. As far as the dances, some of the dances are very acrobatic. You can see there's a lot of lifting, the girls lifting, the boys lifting, jumping in the air. A lot of costumes are fairly heavy, wool made of many fabrics. Part of that, they were worn regardless of the season. So here will be a first piece of the suite of dances I want to show you. I will show you a speech. Hopefully the link will work. And this is the Dolina dancers. Let's see. I can make it, and they are performing here in St. Paul. Here we go. I will show you very short videos, about a minute, no more, for each of them. Let's make it more fun. So this dance, let me quickly switch. This one was a Highlander dance. And if you see the costume, this one is very much impacted by Austro-Hungarian part of Poland because the belts, and so it's a more mountaineer dance. This one I want to show you, this is from Krakow, so the Austro-Hungarian part of Poland. And this is treated as a national dance. Let's see if I can do the Krakowiak for you. This one is from a Festival of Nations in St. Paul.
Polish. The Dolina Polish folk dancers of the Twin Cities.
Want to make sure that you see the dance, not the announcement. Let's hope it plays. I wanted you to see the dance versus singing, sorry. All right. As I said, I want to show you just portion of dances because there's a lot of them. This one, this is from right before COVID, the big concert. My group, Dolina, was celebrating 70 years of dancing in Minnesota. And what you see, both costumes are from central Poland. This one is from north of Łódź. This one is from the south. Obviously, little differences, but dances are very similar as far as Oberek and Kujawiak. Let's see if I can show you some part here. Again, I don't want subtitles, but this is from a concert. This is optional. Yeah, I think yes, it's not copyright. What you just saw was oberek, and oberek is one of the fastest Polish dances. And as I said, those are the heaviest costumes that we have and perform. All right, now I want to show you two different suite of dances from the same city. The city is called Żywiec. It's almost like Itasca here. So that's the beginning of the Polish biggest river, Vistula. You see two suites from the same place. One is from a city, one is from a mountain. I will show you first the city because it's a little different. And this is Dolina performing in Poland in 2017. So that was Żywiec, and this Żywiec was the city, as you can see the outfits. And here will be the same city, but Highlander dances, so the country ones. Let's see. I just wanted you to see the dance. So you have an understanding a little bit of the mountain and the city of Żywiec. And here's the last two suites of dances. What I will show you in a proper order. First will be Mazur, then will be Polonaise. This is from a YouTube, so if you Google, you can find the whole concert of, I think, 2 times 30 minutes. Those are two national dances that were made very popular by Frédéric Chopin. First one will be Mazur, and then will be Polonaise, and those are professional dancers in Poland from a group called Śląsk. See, those are my both favorite because very prestige, noble family dancers. So this one was Mazur, and the next one I will show you is Polonaise. They are typically coming together because costumes and history of those, oops, sorry. Let's see, the link didn't go, but this is what I wanted to show you. All right, here we go. I think now we can go right into the Polonaise. Here we go. That should work now. I think that will be enough for watching movies. So you saw the similarities. Mazur is very fast dance. Polonais is the slow, many times called chodzony in Polish. All right, so now the last part of my presentation is about Poles in Minnesota. You can see that I'm a member of all those groups. That's why I can advertise them. Dolina dancers, they dance in Twin Cities since 1949. I think there's a fourth generation, if not fifth already, of the originally, establishing group in 1949. If you're looking for your genealogical history and you want to find your roots, there is very easy to remember PG, Polish Genealogical Society, Minnesota, MN. Because of pandemic, they meet now obviously electronically via Zoom. So you can Google them and obviously join if you're interested. In Twin Cities, there's also Polish American Culture Institute of Minnesota called PACIM. And there is a Columbia Heights Łomianki sister cities that was created in 1991. There is a nice Polish American history basically related to Second World War. And this is me last year, actually in a parade. We were allowed to walk without masks. It was June of last year when we hoped the pandemic was over. Here is if you want to read about Poles in Minnesota. Very good book. I recommend because I met Professor John Radziłowski. He's a historian right now teaching in Alaska, but he has a Polish roots in history, obviously. That's his map. He created a map. And what you see here was little crosses are basically Catholic establishment parishes that were established by Polish people, migrated because of the history. There were a couple different waves of Poland, but I was just reading yesterday that between 1880 and 1910, so right before we regained independence, 3 million Polish people emigrated, not to Minnesota, but to United States. And you can see here Wadena, there's Crosby, Little Falls, so there is Cloquet. That's where my Antus family is actually originally from Cloquet, Minnesota. And I think I finally reach the end. So here's the time for questions and answers if you have. And if not, we can obviously watch a little more of the Polish dancing.
Dr. Antus, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. I just want to remind everyone that's joined us today that you have an opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A. And we have a couple coming in here, but as they pile up, I've got one for you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about Poland's reaction to the growing conflict on the Ukrainian-Russian border. Of course, Poland is part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and I'm wondering what Poland's position is and how you feel this will unfold in parts of Eastern Europe.
Well, I'm very much worried about it, and not because the border is so close, but there's a lot of Ukrainians already in Poland. I was last time in Poland in 2019, and wherever we go, they were Ukrainians, waitresses on a train, in a bus, on a concert. So I look at the statistics, about 2 million Ukrainians were working in 2019 in Poland. I think it's very wary with what's happening. You heard the Polish history. We didn't have really good history with Russia to start with Soviet Union later. And I think everybody yesterday, I was talking to my parents, they were super excited about the President Biden sending sending 1,700 troops, according to Polish media. Again, I didn't read today's American media, but there's a lot of stress and worry. We are not very happy with what's happening. And first, I remember when the first things were happening, the Polish media was saying, oh, he's bluffing. It's just nothing will happen. But now it becomes a little more serious, and there's a lot of things to worry. Since Russia invaded Crimean Peninsula, and I was actually there in 1991, and this is more Ukrainian than Russia. So obviously there's an appetite from Putin to do, let's call it damage again, and trying to invade Europe. So the history likes to repeat that. I'm very much wary, but nothing I can.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Antus. I appreciate that. We've got a couple questions coming in here from students. The first of which is, and I quote, you said that you speak Spanish and of course Polish and English as well. So this particular student is interested in learning a little bit more about how many languages a typical Pole might speak.
Oh boy, what a question. I can tell about myself because my first language obviously was Polish. Then mom sent me to a school with English, so everybody was speaking English. since I was born in 71, everybody born in 71 in Poland had been forced to speak Russian. So all my generation have 8 years of Russian, 4 in elementary school and 4 years in a high school. I had to add German. I speak German, 5 years of German, 5 years of Spanish. I would say typical today, it's 3 to 4 languages. You actually would not apply for a job if you cannot put in your resume that you speak 3 languages. And I can tell you, getting a PhD in Poland, you have to speak 2 Western languages, as they call it. So not Russia didn't count. So you had to have either German, Spanish, English, something on the Western side. And then for the philosophy of economics, I had to have Latin. So I had 4 years of Latin. I started learning now French because French is so different than all the other Roman languages because of how Americans adopted French words. I cannot pronounce properly in English a French origin words because you do some fun spin with them. So to answer the question, about 3 languages I expected. And
interesting.
yeah, you will not put resume for a very reputable place if you just speak Polish.
Interesting. Well, another student question here is, what surprised you the most about America in terms of what is different from Poland? And what surprised you specifically about Minnesota?
Minnesota is super cold. That's for sure. If it was minus 40s, yeah, I didn't expect that. When I came and I was for first year in La Crosse, Wisconsin, that was my first experience, 98, 99. The winter was so warm. Students were wearing shorts on the campus, so I did not have a scope of cold understanding. What surprised me positively, how much Polish is in America. You travel and you go, I knew that Chicago is Polish. I knew that you go to Buffalo, New York, you find, but we were driving from Niagara Falls to New York, and there was so many Polish villages. We even found Warsaw. There's 29 Warsaws across US. And I think what I really like in general in Minnesota and in America, you are not very prejudiced. I spent 6 months in England and I didn't feel home. But in America, the moment I came, it's like, oh, that melting pot, I fit really good in.
Well, there are a lot of compliments to Poland coming in here from the community. Folks that have had the opportunity to travel to Poland have reiterated some of what you've shared with us, that it's a beautiful country, incredible food. Another question here is from Tracy, and she asks, with so many Roman Catholics, do the politicians mix religious motivations with politics, as some do here in the United States?
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, I have to admit, yes. I was the lucky one in 1990 when I graduated high school. Religion was separate. So we all were going to church for religious classes. 1990, they introduced religious classes into the elementary, so K through 12. You have to have it in kindergarten, elementary, and high school. And I think from that on, there's less Polish people see that and mixing religious and, trying to create a religious country, because Polish people through taxes pay for those religious classes in school, like it or not. You have to select ethic class or go to a private school not to take religious classes. So there's little mess up, let's call it this way. I don't mind religious in my food, and I don't eat meat on Friday. My husband, it took him a while to get the idea. Fish is a great meal, seafood, don't eat meat on Friday. So there is a lot of impact of religious into people thinking. But then you have a problem on the Belarusian border, and I'm still in shock. First was where those people were coming and why Polish people, very religious people, don't go and help. What's going on there? So yeah, politics and religion mix, not good. And abortion law that they change, I'm sure you hear there'll be more protests in Poland. I'm expecting March 8th, there'll be a huge protest this year again, because they change one more time abortion law, and it's not looking good. Political and society, yeah, not good.
Interesting. Well, we have time here for a couple more questions. One of them is about the dancing videos that you shared. And Tracy asks, is Mazur, and you'll have to forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, is that considered a folk ballet?
It's actually considered national dance, and it's obviously, if you saw the costumes, they are fabulous. They come like 16th, 17th century when we still have monarchy and royalty. They have more ballet, and they are the hardest to learn. Not Polonaise. Polonaise is easy, it's a walking dance, but the other one, Mazur, I think you call it in English mazurka. But mazurka in English also means a cake. It's like Polish cake for Easter. So it's like, let's keep it Mazur. Yeah, it's a more like a ballet and like a nobleman, dances, as I said, 16th century, they go back as far as the costume pieces as well.
Dr. Antus, you mentioned March 8th, and we quickly got a follow-up question here. Is that because it's International Day of Women?
Yes. And that's what I celebrate still. I told my husband, don't buy me roses for Valentine. That's American holiday. I celebrate March 8th. Roses are cheaper. Yes.
Interesting.
That's what Polish women will go on a street, I'm sure, because that's what had happened last 2 years, March 8th. Yep.
Well, one other question from a student, I believe, is generally speaking, how do Polish view Americans? And I understand that you might be making a generalization here, but what is the general impression of Americans by Poles?
I think they are super excited and they love Americans. And as I said, President Reagan is obviously the big icon, the same with if we go historically. But I had a pleasure in 1996 or 94, now I forgot which of the year, but I was leading international students group and I was in Warsaw in front of the Royal Castle and one of the American president was there. So either George Bush or Bill Clinton, they were twice. I was checking because I knew it was July, but okay, which president I saw? I don't have a picture, but the whole euphoria in 90s when American presidents will come to Poland and obviously Berlin Wall collapsed. I think that Poles are very much in love with Americans. During the 70s and 80s when there were shortages, the biggest dream of average Polish person was obviously to see America, but to have a pair of jeans and to drink Coca-Cola. So yeah, when they were opening first McDonald's in 90s, Polish people were queuing in line. So think about that. After rationing, queuing in line for the basic, suddenly they were queuing in line to go and see McDonald's.
Well, I think we have time for just one more question here, Dr. Antus, which is, we've all heard a great deal, of course, about Brexit over the course of the past year or two, where the United Kingdom, of course, left the European Union. Poland is currently a part of the European Union. Might we see the same thing with Poland? Is Poland committed to being a member of the EU, or might it too pull itself from the EU?
They are right now a big troublemaker. So if you go and Google any article from either New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Economist, recently I saw one in Economist saying that Poles are so upset that now they have to participate and bring a little more, share of involvement with European Union, and they're creating lots of problems. I think that might be a path for exiting. I don't like it, and maybe what's happening with Ukraine and Putin, maybe that will change their mind. There is a lot of anger towards European Union, and I do not understand that because every time I go to Poland, there is more signs showing European Union sponsor that. They build roads, they spend money on churches, sports facilities, stadiums, swimming pool, you name it. The list of how much donation was given to every single project with European Union is mind-boggling. And then you go and talk to an average Pole. I have some cousins that are farmers and they said, oh, they don't give us enough subsidies for the cows and for the milk. And I'm like, come on, they give you so much that you can afford to hire Ukrainian to come and work on your field. What else you want? So I think Poland is a troublemaker, and I don't know, I'm not a good forecaster, but they might want to quit the European Union. Hopefully they will learn what's happening with UK right now and don't follow.
Well, Dr. Antus, on behalf of the entire community, we want to thank you all. We want to thank you so very much for taking the time to help us better understand Polish culture. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank all of you for joining us here at the Cultural Thursday program. And we look forward to seeing you again next month on March 3rd for our second Cultural Thursday of 2022. Take care.
Bye-bye.